I think I had a line in one of my episodes where it was like, finding the truth is like climbing out of a well. You have to pile fact on top of fact.
Great.
And then even then it doesn't always stick. And you're like, then you kind of go back down and you're like, wait, what did I miss? It's like, it's really a process of getting there.
Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt. If you're interested in programming like this from the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the star of Alaska Daily, Hilary Swank. And first, I just want to congratulate you on your impending parenthood. How are you feeling?
I'm much better, thank you.
You look great.
Thanks. Thank you. I was up until like 16 and a half weeks, had a lot of morning sickness. So
I know you talked about that, and I was so impressed with your fortitude on Good Morning America being there.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I'm so happy for you. And congratulations on that. But most importantly, congratulations on the show, which I love, Alaska Daily. And I have to say, as a journalist myself, to see journalism depicted with such care and realism is so fresh and just new. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that, especially being a journalist yourself. Coming from you means a lot. Thank you.
I am the target demo in large part for this show.
Yes, indeed.
And I want to talk a little bit about, of course, Tom McCarthy, the creator of the show, and he gave journalism another incredible depiction in Spotlight. And I wanted to know how the two of you first connected and to what degree he conceived of this role for you or with you in mind.
Well, it's a good question. It might need to be more directed towards him because when I received the script and then the meeting was set, he didn't say he wrote it for me, so I wouldn't say he did.
Okay.
But it was a great honor that I was thought of for sure, especially from someone like Tom, who is clearly very talented and has a very strong voice and whose work I've really enjoyed all the way back from the Station Agent. I just thought that was such a unique movie and really blew me away. So I've been a fan for a while.
Yeah, and he also played a journalist on The Wire, which gave him another boost.
Yeah, he loves journalists, and I love
clearly loves that.
Loves journalists.
Yeah,
that's it's such a. I think it's hard because you guys have this written word that people read, but they don't see the human behind it. And so he wants to really make sure people see that humanity and understands the passion in which they're coming from. And because certainly, I mean, I'm not going to put a blanket statement on it, but I would think that most journalists don't make a lot of money.
You are correct in assuming that.
Do it for the love, for the passion, for how it ignites them and makes them feel to be truth seekers, truth revealers, to get to the heart of the matter. And all of those things, by the way, is something that I relate to as an actor, because that's what I try and find in each character that I play. So it's not dissimilar when you really break it down.
No.
But I really just appreciate that about him and what he's doing with the show and what he's doing with a lot of his work.
I agree. And there was an adage I learned in grad school, which was giving a voice to the voiceless. And I see this show as really emblematic of that, not only with your character, but the story that she's reporting with her colleague. And the missing and murdered Native women epidemic in North America is just sickening. And I'm so glad that the show is shining a light on that. And I'd love to know what you talked about with Tom in terms of making that piece of this story at the forefront of the storytelling.
I mean, the crazy thing is that here we were in 2021, and I had only learned about 6 months before that about the missing, murdered Indigenous women. And it is, I mean, it's horrifying and it's horrific that this is happening, right? I mean, all the time right now as we speak, and no one's doing anything about it. It's a systemic problem. It's an issue that isn't having a spotlight put on it. It's not being talked about. Nothing's being done about it. So to be a part of a show that can put a spotlight on it and start the conversation and continue the conversation is so much a part of my ethos as an actor. I didn't start as an actor thinking, oh, I want to dive into issues that are important to me. I mean, I was, a teenager.
Of course.
And I didn't really think like that. But if you look back at the trajectory of the choices I've made in my career, certainly so many of them are kind of emblematic of that. And
well, you've played a lot of marginalized people who aren't necessarily in mainstream society, whether by economic status or clearly Brandon Tina because of his gender. You have always kind of, and maybe it's because you're kind of an underdog yourself. You connect to those characters, and I see Eileen as kind of a next version of that model that you've made for yourself.
Thank you. I take that as a huge compliment. And I think we've all felt like an underdog at some point in our life. And that's why I think everyone can relate and connect to those stories. But there's definitely something about the underdog that perseveres and just has such grit and determination that I think inspires people as well. But I feel like, there's in Eileen, there's so much, some people don't like it, that she speaks her mind and she just it just comes out. What she's thinking just comes out. And, she's not about making people feel good. Right.
You mean she acts like a man?
Exactly. And that's what I was going to get to, because so many people say, oh my gosh, she's so harsh or she's so brash. And I'm like, no one would ever say that about a man.
Never.
And it's so interesting that we're, still talking about that. I mean, I feel like we're making leaps and bounds, but we still have so far to go in that realm, because if it were a man, no one would say you're so brash or you're so harsh or you're so, and, it's also just, I feel like it's really refreshing to see someone that isn't a yeser and you're going to get the truth with. That's quite frankly the type of friends that I like to have around.
Absolutely. People have no varnish on the truth, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of digging into the journalism piece of this character, what research did you do about the nuts and bolts of this job? Because what I really love about the show is that you talk about attribution, you talk about sourcing, you talk about all the mechanics of storytelling that, of course, the viewer or reader is not aware of. But on the inside, if we don't have all these elements in place, we can't push publish on a story. So I'd love to know what you as an actor learned about the intricacies of this job.
Well, it's fascinating because as we continue to go on, I just finished episode 7 and I'm just now starting episode 8. But the idea of someone coming in and holding me captive and showing their point of view of the kind of the limited information that they're getting and how they're holding these journalists, which is really happening, accountable for the truth that is out there and how it affects them. It's really crazy when you think about that they're being held accountable for facts that they're revealing that has nothing to do with them. They're just the messenger.
Of course. Right. Well, as we've learned, people don't like truth that goes counter to what they believe. So of course, then they blame us for spreading what they consider to be misinformation or lies, when in actuality, it's just exposing the truth.
Exactly. And how that then started from such high powered level people saying, well, that's just a lie. Well, that's not the truth.
Right.
And so this vitriol that came along with that and just kind of dispelling facts and truth as nonsense. So we're wading through that polarization right now as a society, which is really scary for journalists.
It's really scary.
It's very scary. It's a very, very strange time. So we're dealing with that in the show, which will be revealed soon.
Yes.
And then also getting into kind of what you're talking about before you hit publish and stuff, that we're also in this state of competition too, scoop, getting the scoop, getting it out there, how you lose viewerships when you don't get there first. But if you get there first, it might mean that you're leaving out facts or you're already putting an opinion on something that hasn't been fully resolved.
Right.
The great thing, I think one of the greatest things actually about being an actor is getting the opportunity to walk in different people's shoes and seeing through their eyes and, in a way that you would never experience and not ever as deep as you go because you can't, it's not your life, but you get to really sense and dive into that world in a way where you learn so much as a human being. And it's such a wonderful gift. I mean, I don't know if I answered your question
absolutely. But I guess just, I'm always in, because I don't know the first thing about acting. So I never know how much knowledge you have of someone's profession. Like when you step into that person's shoes, obviously you have basic knowledge of journalism. You're someone who consumes words and you read the news, et cetera. But in terms of sort of what a journalist does all day, I think it would surprise people, the process that goes into just publishing a 500-word story.
Yes. I mean, all of the, I think I had a line in one of my episodes where it was finding the truth is like climbing out of a well. You have to pile fact on top of fact.
Right.
And then even then it doesn't always stick. And you're like, then you kind of go back
Right.
down and you're like, wait, what did I miss? It's like, it's really a process of getting there. It isn't just sitting down and writing something, and it isn't and shouldn't be about opinion. It is about facts, and getting your opinion out of the way. Right. I think is super challenging. I don't even know how you do it, because you also only have your experience.
Right.
And so how your background affects you, or the other journalist's background affects them, or what happened to their parents, or et cetera, et cetera. That's also a whole pileup of.
Right. Well, which is why it's so important for your character to be partnering with Roz to do that story, because there's no way Eileen would have the cultural, not only sensitivities, but just the insider knowledge to know how to frame something or ask a question. And we hear Roz using some of her native language and connecting with some of the subjects. And all of that amounts to just greater connectivity with the subject. So tell me about that interplay. I really enjoy that. And
just how different cultures are, culturally, how when you go to Japan, or when you go to, these indigenous people lands, or whatever it is, just people have different customs and different ways of going about things. So it's really true. And seeing Eileen like come to, eventually, slowly,
right,
to realizing that Roz does have these strengths and does bring something to the story that she wouldn't be able to.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, right? That both of their strengths complement each other.
Absolutely. And I also love something about the show that I wonder if you have felt resonates with you as an actor, this interplay between the generations, that the world in which Eileen came up, almost like the world you came up as an actor, is so different from the world in which young actors and young journalists come up. So tell me about sort of that idea of kind of learning to coexist and learn from each other. And does that resonate with you as an artist?
100%. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because the fact of that Eileen is so much like what people would say a man is like. It's because she was a woman in this all men-led business.
Right.
It was it is still, it's very patriarchal. So much of the world is still so patriarchal. And certainly when I broke into the business, everything was from the white man's point of view. It was all written by white men. It was all directed by white men.
Absolutely.
And there was so much that came with that. And there was so much learning how to navigate in that world, in that space, and, how you felt about yourself as a woman. And it's very different now. We still have a ways to go again, but it is different, and it's just a different world. And so I think that there's misunderstandings a lot from the younger generation to seeing Eileen, because she's a woman. So why wouldn't she be more this or more that, tender, to say, or calm, or understand?
Right.
But it's just a reminder that it's just not great to put anything on any gender. Just let people be people, and men, let them be sensitive, let them be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And, let's find more blurring and less stereotyping.
Yes. Amen to that. And just generally speaking, at this point in your career, I mean, it's hard to imagine, after 2 Oscars and just an amazing run of film work, for you to take time out of your life, especially at this now amazing time in your personal life, to do a show like this. What does this mean to you after all these years of working, and what most excites you when you get to work and step on that set, with all your accolades and experience?
Well, I think what most excites me is twofold. One is the story that is about to be, discovered and peeled onion layer to onion layer, like just finding the gradations within the character, within the story. And stories that are so rich and so moving to me and so inspiring to me. And it's such a gift, and it's such a blessing to think that at 8 years old, I wanted to be an actor. And now I'm 48 and I'm still acting. I'm got the opportunity, and I get these beautiful opportunities to embody these incredible people and to learn so much as a human being, as I said before, and blows open my blinders of how I see the world, but then it also deepens me as an artist. It makes me more empathetic, and just makes me see the world so differently. That's one. But two, the collaboration process that comes with that. I love it so much. I get so much out of it. It's, before we knew these words like in the flow or in the zone, I was like, oh, that's what I'm feeling when I act with other people, other artisans. I mean, it takes so many skilled artisans to create these stories. And that's why even when you watch something and it doesn't always work for whatever reason, because it doesn't always. And Clint Eastwood said it so well, you always aim for the bullseye, but you don't always hit it.
Right.
But it's just like, that's why it's even more magical when it does come together. And I just love when you're like doing a scene and you're so in it and it's all flowing and you're just it feels so good. And the other person's in it with you. So you have this combined flow. And then the director comes in and is like, cut. And you're like, you traveled. It's just, it's just beautiful.
It sounds like magic. You get to sort of make magic for a living. That's how it always seems to me.
That's what it feels like, I tell you. And it really never gets old because there's the same prep time that I need. And there's a similarity in the process, but it's always different.
That's amazing. And how has Eileen impacted you as a person just in the few months you've been playing her? Do you kind of feel like she's seeping into you a little bit? Is there like an Eileen effect where you're saying maybe more what you feel than before?
There can be, for sure. I'll come out and I'll just be faster. I'm a little bit more New York. I'm a little bit like, come on, let's go. Come on. My pace changes because she has a certain pace about her.
I love it.
I'm definitely someone who I don't speak my mind as well as she does. And it's something that I'd like to be more like. And then that thing gets in my way of like, oh, don't be that, girl. That's not what comes in my head, but I would say that if I had to put words to it, that would be it. Right. Instead of just being like, hey, that really hurt my feelings. Please don't do that again, or whatever it is.
Well, I really like that scene where she apologizes to Roz, or they sort of have that moment in their editor's office where Roz is like, the way you acted really hurt me. And they kind of reach this kind of professional consensus, like, okay, we're moving on. We like each other. We respect each other. So to be able to see two women having that interaction on screen, and it's not antagonistic, it's actually just pure professional respect, I think is actually really cool.
I do too. And thank you for saying that and recognizing that. I do too. To also see that we don't all have to be one way. We can be our own personalities and still find ways to interact with each other and debate each other, healthy debates.
100%. And of course, final question for these audiences and these conversations is always the dreaded piece of advice for actors, as if there's only one piece of advice. Yeah. But is there something that you hold on to as something you really wish you had known when you started that could have made your journey a little bit easier? And what would that be?
I can't say that any one thing would make anything easier because it's all about experience. And you don't know until you look back what that experience entails for each individual. Each and every one of us is so unique and so different. But what I would say is everyone has an opinion.
That is true. Right.
They aren't being necessarily reflective of you. They're being reflective of themselves. So when you hear feedback, it's really hard to do, but just not taking it personally, not saying, oh, I'm, whatever it is that they said. I mean, I used to hear, you're not pretty enough for this role, or you're too pretty for this role, or, you're not, whatever it may be. I mean, I heard I had terribly bee-stung lips. I mean, crazy things. You're like,
and by the way, people pay for that now. They pay good money in Beverly Hills for that.
And you're just, this stuff, especially when you're young, but at any age, it affects you. It just does. And you can't help that to not hear that on repeat. And I think the biggest thing is, and we hear it all the time, but is to really silence those voices and take your constructive criticism from people you trust. So and, and that's actually one thing, if I could go back, because I did take that stuff personal and I did think, oh, do I have to change that about myself? And you can't. I can't change my lips. Like, I can't change the way I look. It's just, I'm either going to fit or I'm not going to fit. And that role's right for me or it's not right for me. And they have a vision for what they're going for. And
Right.
If you don't fit in it, then there's another something thing coming around the corner.
Absolutely. And by the way, we're so glad you didn't change anything about yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And that is so true. And I think it, like you said, it says more about them than it does about the person receiving the feedback. And that is a really good lesson, I think, for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as always, Hilary, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations. We're so happy for you. And we really hope more people continue to discover Alaska Daily.
Thank you so much. What a great interview. It was lovely talking to you.
Of course. You too.